Thank you for looking at this second of a two-part video on our experiences of Zersetzung. Just to quickly recap, in the first video we discussed what Zersetzung is and looked at some examples. We looked at the basic formula behind Zersetzung. We looked at some of the techniques used in a Zersetzung persecution. And you can see why Zersetzung is sometimes called no-touch torture. We looked at our experiences of the world of electronic spying and cyberbullying. In this second part of our two-part video on Zersetzung, we will discuss the cover-up that is so key to Zersetzung. We'll review what others have said about Zersetzung, and we'll look at actual slides used by a spy agency to train its operatives in Zersetzung. But Zersetzung starts with a cover-up. A shutdown of help, a cover-up conspiracy to pervert the course of justice by ensuring that there is never any proper investigation. Once the secret intelligence agencies are involved, people are scared to help. The cover-up conspiracy is by itself very threatening, since it is a denial of basic justice by the state. It leaves you unprotected. When I first went to the police, I was absolutely amazed that they didn't check a single witness. They didn't want to know the truth. They had what is known as willful blindness. So I went to the Home Office in Britain, and eventually I contacted the minister who is responsible for Britain's security services and its secret police. Her name was Hazel Blairs. I contacted her through my Member of Parliament. 3 times she denied our request for an honest investigation, each time citing a reason that was untruthful. In fact, her 3 reasons are mutually exclusive, since they all contradict each other. The only thing she wanted to do was ensure there was never any investigation, as presumably her masters had told her. The minister was also chairman of then Prime Minister Blair's ruling Labour Party. When we came to Canada, much the same. Back in 2011, I brought my complaint against CSIS, Canada's intelligence organisation, to their oversight committee, the SIRC. Why I had brought the complaint, I was getting intimidated and threatened by them just for having made the complaint. Indeed, the chairman of the SIRC was on record as having said on the radio that CSIS wouldn't do these things, this despite the fact that the Canadian press had reported to the contrary. Just a couple of weeks after the ridiculous statement by Dr. Porter, he was forced to resign from the Security Intelligence Review Committee under somewhat of a cloud, and subsequently under an even bigger cloud. He is in jail at present in Panama, where he faces extradition to Canada for charges that include fraud, conspiracy and bribe-taking. Such was the level of control over Canada's intelligence services. I also went through intermediaries to senior government ministers in Canada, and again, not a single witness has been checked. You can check the details yourself by going to my report Russell's Zersetzung and looking at page 89 to 125 that specify the details of cover-up. It talks about the UK cover-up, section L. Under section M, it talks about the cover-up in Canada. So in typical Stasi style, the formula used for Zersetzung is always the same. First to slander and character assassinate, then to threaten, intimidate and harass, then to cover up by ensuring no investigation takes place, then to say you're nuts when you complain about the cover-up. Stephen Knight writes in his book The Brotherhood, By setting up a situation that most people will think of as fantasy, these people can poison every part of a person's life. Many of the attacks in Zersetzung are not mere fantasy attacks or suggestions, but very real. Shots fired at someone in front of witnesses, for example, or recorded death threats, or a car smashing one's porch to bits. These are all very real and very witnessed. It is a mistake of some to see Zersetzung as only a psychological attack. That's a part of it, particularly in its early stages, but it's only a small part of Zersetzung. In fact, most Zersetzung attacks are not psychological at all. Being harassed out of one's apartment, having one's children threatened, or having a motorbike driven at one, that's very real. The psychology behind Zersetzung is not in fooling the citizen who is the target victim, but in fooling the general public into the mistaken belief that nothing much is happening. And what do others, and indeed the spy agencies themselves, say about Zersetzung? Well, there's quite a lot of information actually. I've written a report called Zersetzung Some Precedents, which lists 25 precedents of where Zersetzung has happened to others. Nothing to do with me, but from Nobel laureates, former spies themselves who've turned into victims of Zersetzung, senior newspaper reporters, and many others. Their history is interesting. It's so similar to my own, and you can check most of it out for yourself on the internet. And then there is the press. Zersetzung is the terminology used by the UK's The Sunday Times in their article Lies, Threats and Whistleblowers, in which journalist Liam Clark wrote about the use of Zersetzung by UK intelligence, saying that he had come across it, I'll quote him, many times. And Canada's Globe and Mail published an article referring to the persecution of innocent citizens in Canada, calling it D&D, and saying, lacking a case, CSIS, that is Canada's intelligence agency, disrupted suspect's life. Check out the word D&D, as it is commonly used to describe Zersetzung techniques. Indeed, years ago the Church Committee of the United States Senate, inquiring into what it called counterpro, another name for Zersetzung, referred to the illegal use of disrupt and discredit, i.e. D&D techniques, to persecute innocent citizens, saying, and I'll quote them, vicious tactics have been employed. But what do our intelligence agencies say themselves? Well, recently Edward Snowden leaked training material used by the UK's GCHQ intelligence organisation that was marked top secret. No wonder they wanted it kept secret, since the material demonstrates that UK intelligence is training their staff in the use of Zersetzung. Look at some of the documentation for yourself. Here are some slides used in their training programme. JTRIG is a department of GCHQ. GCHQ is the cyber, electronic, signals arm of British intelligence. You'll notice on this training slide that they have used that they're talking about disrupting, degrading, deceiving people. That is not the language of an intelligence operation, but of a secret police. You'll also note that they have shared this slide with other members of the Five Eyes intelligence community. And pushing boundaries they certainly are, with slides showing how to discredit a company, stop deals, or ruin business relationships, set up honey traps, and the 4 Ds again: deny, disrupt, degrade, deceive. Online covert action with the intent of achieving this: create cognitive stress, physiological stress, affective stress. If one can achieve all that, one will have destroyed the victim entirely. Note the reference to the 4 Ds and its relationship to the D&D reported in Canada and the D&D disrupt and discredit techniques unearthed by the Church Committee. As we see from the slides, there is no doubt that UK intelligence is training its staff in Zersetzung and sharing this training programme with others in the Five Eyes intelligence community. Indeed, in Canada, in 2006, before the Parliamentary Standing Committee on National Security and Defence, Mr. Jack Hooper, then Deputy Director of CSIS, Canada's intelligence agency, describing a particular case, said that as there was not sufficient evidence to proceed with charges, they moved, and I'll quote him, they moved quickly into a diffuse and disrupt mode. Mr. Cooper went on to say, at the end of the day, if prosecution is not viable, there are other techniques. Indeed, WikiLeaks unearthed a US diplomatic cable in which the former CSIS chief, Mr. Judd, admitted to a US State Department official that CSIS had been, I'll quote him, vigorously harassing people in Canada. At the beginning of this video, Patricia and I posed the question, how might Zersetzung affect you? Or to put it bluntly, why should you care? Well, let me give you 3 reasons. The first reason is, it might happen to you, or a relative, or a close friend. Zersetzung is unusual, but it is nevertheless more common than you think. Never did I anticipate anything like this ever happening to me and my family. The second reason is that you probably want an effective intelligence service to protect you from horror stories like the terrible events of 9/11 or the 7/7 London tube bombings. Well, you can get that from an efficient intelligence service. You don't get that from a secret police, since the functions are different. An intelligence service, to put it simply, is about finding out information, collecting it. A secret police service is about hiding information. They are mutually exclusive. And as our security intelligence world morphs more into a secret police service, we may be losing some of the protection against terrorism that we thought we had. To put it straight, a security intelligence service is about the quiet collection of truthful information and its analysis. Its objective is getting at the truth. Contrast this with a secret police service, whose job is to serve power elites and not the state as a whole. They are agents provocateurs, spreaders of lies, harassers, intimidators, sometimes even murderers. Their objective is to hide the truth. And then there is a third area. It's called rule of law. Because to me, Zersetzung all begs the question, where else are power elites pulling the government's chain? What is the point of voting congressmen or members of parliament to pass laws when power elites in the secret services can flout them at will? And where else is this lack of rule of law affecting our democracy? To me, Zersetzung is more than just an attack on civil liberties. It's an attack on the very underpinning of democracy, rule of law. Zersetzung may just be the biggest single threat to democracy since the end of the Cold War. Thank you very much for reviewing my video. On the screen you will find 3 URLs. These URLs are places where some of the articles and papers I've written can be found. They can also be found by using search engines on the internet. May I just draw to your attention 2 of my papers that are referred to in this particular video. One of them is the paper, the 125-page paper, Russell Zersetzung. It is a blow-by-blow account of what has happened. It shows the various incidents, the level of proof, and the details of the cover-up conspiracy. Over 120 of the incidents are supported by corroborative evidence. Thank you very much for viewing it.